And we're recording. Welcome to sightofmoon.com. I'm Joe Dumond, and this is Shavuot, May 3rd, 2020. And today we're going to be talking to you about the 2300 days, the 1260, 1290, 1335, and the Great Tribulation. And we've got a lot to cover. We got some basic background stuff for the newer people to see where I'm coming from and how I got to where I to where I am now. Make sure you got lots of note paper today. This is going to be a heavy duty teaching, and I know that by the end of it, a lot of you are going to be complaining about your headaches. So, and I'm not making any apologies for that today, but we do have a lot to do and a lot to cover. So I'm going to get started on this fairly quickly, but before we do, I want to start with a prayer. And our Father Jehovah, I thank you for this beautiful day here in Ontario, but I thank you, Father, for the technology that all of us who are locked up in our homes during this pandemic that you've sent, that we can get together with each other from around the world. And so I thank you for that technology, and I ask your blessing upon it, that it works for us today and that everyone is able to learn today wherever they are. And I ask that you be with us and comfort us. Comfort us with your truth. Comfort us about our families. We've all got different family situations. Some are tougher than others, but they're all our families and we love them. So we ask that you comfort us in that area as well. Bless me today, Father, to be able to communicate properly and to express these things so that the brethren can understand. And help us to understand what you are showing us. And let your truth prevail, and not Joe Dumond's, not anyone else, but let your truth come through in all of this. So I ask you to be with us. I ask that you guide us all for the glory of your name. In the name of Jehovah, I pray. Amen. Okay, time to share screen. What's happening? What do you folks see right now? Randy, what do you see on your screen? You see the 2300 days, the two witnesses?
Got you side by side with it.
You got me side by side?
Correct. You got the torahcalendar.com and your, there you go, 2300 days.
I'm sorry, I don't know. What do you see the 2300 day PowerPoint?
I do.
Randy.
Johan does. Randy, do you?
The 2300 days slide is up for you.
Okay, very good. I'm going to put this full screen. For me, that means I'm going to. Okay, so this is what we're talking about today. And we're going to get right into it. Randy, can you mute everybody, please? Leviticus 26. If you will not be reformed by me, by these things, but will still walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you, and I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And I that shall execute the vengeance of the covenant. And when you are gathered inside your cities, I will send the plague among you, and you shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. When I have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and they shall deliver you your bread again by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. I've been focused on this verse for so long that I focus only on the sword aspect of it and neglected the pestilence, the plague, and the famine parts of it. And they're going to come back into our teaching today. But I wanted to start off with this verse because this has been my most, the first I'm most afraid of for the longest of time. Ezekiel 7:1. And it happened the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, "And you, son of man, so says the Lord Jehovah to the land of Israel, an end. The end has come on the four corners of the land. Now the end is on you, and I will send my anger on you and will judge you." Now just remember, Ezekiel is prophesying 100 years after Israel's already gone into captivity. "My anger on you and will judge you according to your ways, and will lay on you all your abominations. And my eye shall not spare you, neither will I have pity, but I will repay on your ways on you, and your abomination shall be in your midst. And you shall know that I am Jehovah. So says the Lord Jehovah, and evil, behold, and only evil has come. An end has come. The end has come. It awakes against you. Behold, it has come. The encirclement has come to you, O dwellers of the land. The time has come. The day of tumult is near, and not a shout of the mountains. And I will soon pour out my fury on you and fulfill my anger on you. And I will judge you according to your ways, and will repay you for all your abominations. And my eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity. I will repay you according to your ways and your abominations that are in your midst. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, who strikes. Behold the day. Behold, it has come. The encirclement has gone out. The rod has blossomed. Pride has budded. Violence has risen up for the rod. Ezekiel 7 verse 11. Violence has risen up for a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, nor of their multitude, nor of any of their riches, nor shall there be wailing for them. The time has come, the day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is on all her multitude. For the seller shall not return to that which is sold, although they are still alive. For the vision to all her multitude shall not return, and a man shall not hold his life strong in iniquity. They have blown the trumpet, even to make all ready, but none goes out to battle. For my wrath is on all her multitude. And I've wondered, what does this mean? None goes out to battle. Why? Just last week or the week before, the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier, 710 sailors have fallen ill. The total crew is about 5,000. One officer died. 3,000 of them were put on a 14-day quarantine. This ship is docked in Guam, and I'm not sure if it's still there today, but it was when I was preparing this presentation. The USA has 11 aircraft carriers, and 3 of them are in the Pacific arena. The USS Ronald Reagan is docked in Yokosuka, Japan. They have reports of COVID-19 sickness on the ship, but nobody's talking anymore. And they're keeping that hush hush. After the first captain in the USS Ronald Reagan was, the USS Roosevelt, that captain was fired for letting people know that his crew was sick. The third aircraft carrier is the USS Nimitz, and it's currently docked in Bremerton, Washington. And they are denying any sickness at all. Yet the reports on shore saying there are a number of sailors in hospital with COVID-19. And I only bring this out to show you the vulnerability of what Ezekiel just said. The US Army no longer reveals the number of infected soldiers, yet they have a number of soldiers who are sick with COVID-19. The sword is outside. Ezekiel 7 verse 15, the sword is outside, and the plague and the famine inside. Wow, is that talking about what we're talking about today? What's going on in North America today? What's going on in the world today? I don't know. He who is in the field shall die with the sword, and he who is in the city shall be devoured by the famine and plague. But if the fugitives shall escape, then they shall be like doves of the valleys on the mountains. All of them mourning, each one for his iniquity. All hands shall be feeble, and all knees shall go weak as water. They shall also gird on sackcloth, and trembling shall cover them. And shame shall be on all the faces, and baldness on all the heads. They shall throw their silver into the streets, and their gold shall be an impure thing. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of Jehovah. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because their iniquity has become a stumbling block for them. And the beauty of his ornament he has set it in majesty. But they made the images of their abominations and of their hateful things in it. Therefore I have put it to them as an impure thing, and I will give it into the hands of strangers for a prize, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall defile it. I will also turn my face from them, and they shall defile my secret place, and violent ones shall enter into it and defile it. Make a chain, for the land is full of bloody judgments, and the city is full of violence. And I will bring the most evil of the nations, and they shall possess their houses. I will also make the pomp of the strong to cease, and their holy places shall be defiled. Ruin comes, and they shall seek peace, but none shall be. Disaster on disaster shall come, and rumor to rumor shall be, and they shall seek a vision from the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and the wisdom from the elders. The king shall mourn, and the prince shall be clothed with despair, and the hands of the people of the land shall be troubled. I will do to them according to their way, and according to their judgments. I will judge them, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. Boom. What a way to start off a teaching. Boom, right in your face. Heavy duty, right off the bat. We had blood moons in 2014 and 2015. There was a big hype back then. And I told you that we would have dark moons in 2016, and we did. And I didn't know the calendar was going to be changed by, 30 days that year, but it was. The fourth sabbatical cycle is a cycle with the curse of famine, war, and the plague. And we're in that fourth sabbatical cycle now. 2020 is the middle of this fourth jubilee cycle, when all these things are supposed to be starting to happen. Not all happening, starting to happen. There are blood moons, or there will be blood moons on June 5th and July 5th in 2020. And I mention that because when you get to the end, remember this. I'm getting things set up here at the beginning. Remember this. What do they mean? I'm trying not to do that whole teaching on the blood moons right now. We have a teaching on it. Go and watch it. But we believe that they are significant. They are indications of things. And we've traced them right back to before Adam died and before every major event in the Bible. There are blood moons and dark moons on the high holy days. So here we are, 2020. Shavuot, 2020. What is about to take place? Passover, 2020, March 10th. The World Health Organization declares a pandemic, and the world is shut down. First of all, we got Passover moved ahead by 30 days. I was not expecting that. I didn't know there'd be a pandemic. I'm just reading my scriptures and trying to tell you what it says. But here we are. Jehovah set it up. Who declared a pandemic on Passover 2020? What's going on today? There are things happening today. Again, this is a heavy-duty teaching, and some of you new people may not be ready for this. So put on your seatbelts and hunker down, because this is going to be tough. Now, you who are the judge angels, judge now if the blood moons of 2014, 2015, and the dark moons of 2016, all of them on the high holy days, are a warning of war and famine, or if they're not. You decide if they are indeed a warning from Jehovah. And if they are, if you decide that they are, then you are obligated to warn others from this day forward. If you decide what I'm teaching you today is true, then you're obligated to warn others. Ezekiel 33:1. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the sons of your people and say to them, when I bring the sword on it, on a land, and take one man from the people of the land, of their borders, and set him for a watchman, if when he sees the sword come on the land, he blows the trumpet and warns the people, then whoever hears the sound of the trumpet and does not take warning, if the sword does come and take him away, his blood shall be on his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet and did not take warning. His blood shall be on himself. But he who takes warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, if the sword comes and takes any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. But I will require his blood at the watchman's hand. And you, son of man, I have set you a watchman on the house of Israel. Therefore you shall hear the word from my mouth and warn them from me. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, here I am, send me. The big, dumb, stupid guy from Ontario, yeah, I'll do it. And he said, go and tell this people, you hear indeed, but do not understand. And seeing, you see, but do not know. Make the heart of this people fat and make their ears heavy and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn back and be healed. What is he saying? What? He doesn't want them to be turned around. What? You're not trying to save the world. You're sending a warning. Then I said, Lord, Lord, how long? And he answered, until the cities are wasted, without inhabitant, and the house without a man, and the land laid waste, a desolation. And until Jehovah has moved men far away, and the desolation in the midst of the land is great. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return and be consumed like the terebinth, and like the oak being felled, yet has its stump. The holy seed is its stump. This is talking about some very serious things today. And I volunteered to talk about the sabbatical and jubilee years when it was exciting and brand new. But at that time, I had no idea how deep and how far reaching they would be. And many of you now know some of those things and you understand what I'm talking about. But those of you who are learning this stuff, you have got to speak out. Once you see the truth, once you see the sword coming, you've got to speak out. You've got to let others know. You got to let your own assembly, your own fellowship, your brethren, you got to start speaking out. Noah's flood took place, again, this is a prelude to the end. Another note here, Noah's flood took place at the second Passover, May 17th, 18th, 2181 BC. And there were blood moons in the years preceding that on the holy days. And Jehovah said, Genesis 7 verse 1, Jehovah said to Noah, you and your house come into the ark, for I've seen your righteousness before me in this generation. You shall take with you every clean animal by sevens, the male and female, and take 2 of the animals that are not clean, the male and female. Also take of the fowls of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth. For in 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy from off the face of the earth every living thing that I have made. Why have I emphasized the 7 days? And it happened after 7 days that the waters of the flood came into being on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month. So the 17th day of the 2nd month, That means that 7 days before that was the 10th day of the month. What happens on the 10th day of the month going into Passover? Yes, I'm still saying that Noah was keeping Passover in the second month. What does that mean? Again, I'm preluding here to the end, so make notes of these things. Noah was selected on the 10th day, just before Passover. Now that we are in the midst of the 70th Jubilee cycle, where are we now that Passover was 1 month earlier than expected? Because in my book, The 2300 Days of Hell, I've been saying that May 31st, 2020 was the start of the 2,300-day count. I've done this preamble, this pre-introduction here to get you thinking about a number of things about this year, about the events that are taking place that have already started. So we have some confusion. Now we have confusion about the beginning of the year starting in March instead of April. Shavuot starting in May 3rd instead of May 31st. What does that do? How does that change everything? Does it change anything at all? So there's May 3rd, that's today. And I'm using on this counting system here, the Gregorian calendar. So there are 28 days left in the month of May. And then I count 30, 31 to figure out the 2,300 days where that brings us to. And that brings us up to 2026. 1, 2, 3, what's a month is that? August 20th, 2026 is 20th day. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm trying to understand. Again, what I'm showing you here now is the part it is confusing. So don't take this as what I'm saying to be correct. This is what I'm going to go through the process here of helping you to understand how you can figure this out. Again, I'm using the Gregorian calendar. You will become experts in all the different calendar systems after today. Here's the Torah calendar chart. When you go to torahcalendar.com, this is the chart they have for the 6th month, which is August 20th, 2026. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, what do I see here? Well, there's a blood moon the week after. Again, I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't understand. I'm just making notes. I'm putting this together. I'm trying to understand stuff. So we've been saying that the 2300-day count of Daniel 8 begins at Shavuot 2020. We said that because it lined up with the Feast of Trumpets, and then 3.5 years, because at the end of that, from Shavuot 2020, 2300 days later, brings you the Feast of Trumpets. 3.5 years after that for the two witnesses brings you to Passover, and 3.5 years after that brings you to the end of the tribulation. It fit nice and neat. But just by doing this, you've already made a mistake. So back in 2005, when I was trying to wrestle with this and understanding this, I made a classic mistake. Oops. Oh, Joe's admitting he's wrong. Yes and no. Yes, I was right. But no, I was not right in the calendar that I was using. So that's why you're going to become experts today. This is going to be very challenging. Daniel 9:26 says, and after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the ruler who shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end of it shall be with the flood, and ruins are determined until the end shall be war. Johanan, you're the only guy I can see. Everything going good? You can hear me? Fine? Okay, thank you. Ruins are determined until the end shall be war. The Messiah spoken of here is not Yeshua. It's talking about the Mashiach, Israel, the anointed, Israel. Israel is to be cut off after 62 Jubilee cycles. Habakkuk 3:13. You went forth from the salvation of your people for the salvation of your anointed. You struck the head of the house of the wicked to bear the foundation to the next Selah. Your anointed is talking about Israel. That's why I chose this verse as an example. Daniel 9:26 says, after 62 weeks, Israel, Mashiach, the Messiah, it's translated 39 times anointed, 37 times. The other 2 times it is translated Messiah, and that's here in Daniel. This word Mashiach is it talking about the Messiah, Yeshua. After 62 weeks, Mashiach, Israel, shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the ruler who shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end of it shall be with the flood, and the ruins are determined until the end shall be war. After 69 weeks brings you to 1996. The 70th Jubilee cycle was after 1996. We are in the final 70th Jubilee cycle that Daniel 9 was talking about. It just so happens that this is also the 120th Jubilee cycle since the creation of Adam. Genesis 6:3 says there will be 120 Shana, 120 periods of time. And that's where we are now. And you shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, 149-year period of time, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. And on the corner of the altar, desolating abominations, even until the end, and that which was decreed shall be poured out on the desolator. So when is this going to cease? And when does it begin? Again, that is directly connected to the 1290-day prophecy of Daniel 12. Do you see a connection here? This year, 2020, is the middle of this 70th Jubilee cycle. On Passover, which we kept March 9th to 10th, who declared a worldwide pandemic, similar to the plague of the Exodus coming on them at Passover, is now being declared in our day and in our time now. And many of us are still locked in our homes during this time. Strange coincidence. So the thing about Leviticus 26 was that I was focused on the sword, but I was not focused on the other elements that are also stressed here. I will send the plague. I will send the plague. And that's where we are now. And when you have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and they shall deliver your bread again by weight, and you shall eat it and not be satisfied. Sword, plague, and famine. Again, I only focused on the sword for the most part, and that was my mistake. Leviticus 26:29, and you shall eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters, you shall eat. Now that's famine. This 4th sabbatical cycle and the 5th sabbatical cycle include these things. And we're in the middle of the 4th one now. The news just this past Tuesday, April 22nd, 2020, so this is like last week, I'm putting this together. The UN Food Agency announced we are at the beginning of a biblical famine in 2020 because of COVID-19. Their words, not mine. A biblical famine. The gentleman speaking is Mr. Beasley, and he said today 821 million people go to bed hungry every night all over the world. A further 135 million people are facing crisis levels of hunger or worse. And a New World Food Program analysis shows that as a result of COVID-19, an additional 130 million people could be pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of 2020. Sword, plague, and famine. Beasley said if those 30 million people can't be reached, our analysis shows that 300,000 people could starve to death every single day over a 3-month period. And that doesn't include increased starvation due to the coronavirus. He's talking about the breakdown in transportation and getting the food to these people who are starving. In a worst case scenario, we could be looking at famine in about 36 countries. And in fact, in 10 of these countries, we already have more than 1 million people per country who are on the verge of starvation, he said. April 22nd, 2020. That's when this is being spoken about. As of April 11th, 2020, 25% of the North American meat processing plants were shut down. Without the restaurants, the most expensive cuts were being ground into hamburger. The amount of money per animal was decreasing. So they're not making as much money from each cow that they kill, or pig, or chicken, or turkey, or whatever it is that they're slaughtering. Without the restaurants and the school lunch programs, food is being destroyed due to no markets and no people to pick up and process the crops. So the food processing plants are getting sick. The people in them are working in close quarters. Now they're being mandated, and today is May 3rd, and now some of them are being mandated to stay open to prevent this crisis from coming of famine. At the same time, food pantry lines are stretched out over 5 miles as some people run out of money for rent and food after not working for a month. So if they're, like myself, I've been off of work since March, and we've got unemployment coming in, we got pogey checks coming in. We started to get ready for this. A lot of people they're living paycheck to paycheck. So they're lined up here collecting food that's being given away. Now they can pay their rent. And now a lot of these rents are coming due. Here it is, May 1st, the rents are due, and people got to make a choice. Do I pay the rent? A lot of them are deferring their payments, putting it off for 3 months, putting it at the end of adding that interest further on down the road. We have another crisis going on right now. It's called the biblical-sized locust. A locust of biblical proportion. Now, I'm not making up this biblical size stuff. This is what the news is reporting. And you can see it here in East Africa, Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Uganda, Ethiopia, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and the western side of India. So you can see the swarms and the size of them here, the different bands or groups or adults by the dots that are there. All this just taking place this year in 2020. Daniel 9:26. Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. Israel, the anointed, the Mashiach, is who is being spoken of here. They will be cut off and be as if they never were. We've gone overnight from the most powerful stock market in the world into a recession or depression. When this happened in 1929, it led into World War II. Israel is all 12 tribes. Israel is not just the state of Israel, which is the tribe of Judah. Israel is all 12 tribes. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease, and on a corner of the altar desolating abominations, even until the end, and that which was decreed shall be poured out on the desolator. So 2020 is in the midst of the week. You are aware that the Sanhedrin was about to sacrifice a lamb here at Passover this year on the Temple Mount. All they had to do is get the government to approve it. They did not. So they are very eager to do this. They are on the doorstep of doing it. They just got to get the government to do it. And the thing was, there was nobody on the Temple Mount because they're all in lockdown because of COVID. They could have done it. What would happen if they did that? In May 20th, 1972 was Shavuot. So I'm showing you May 20th here. The covenant made with many, the United Nations Environmental Program, was created June 5th to June 16th, 1972. It became known as the UNEP, and this was done in Stockholm, Sweden at this time. So I'm just showing you this covenant made with many and showing you how 49 years later, where that brings you to, and that brings you to 2020. And what's happening this year? The United States has opted out of the Paris Accord, which is the newest version of the name of the UNEP, the Paris Accord, and that takes place in November 2020. Now, January 1, 1973, the United Kingdom signed the agreement to enter the common market. This is still part of the 1972 year, which goes from Aviv to Aviv. And Brexit takes place on December. The final part of Brexit takes place on December 31st, 2020. This again is a 49-year period of time. The USA dissolves the Paris Accord November 2020, which is the most recent name of the UNEP, which began in 1972. This too is 49 years, both covenants with many, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. I just think that's very interesting. Seems to be lining up here. Now, this chart here, I'm just showing you how I've lined up the fall holy days and made the 8th day feast equal the year 2045. The 7th day of the Feast of Sukkot is equal to the year 2044. The first day of Sukkot would be the year 2038. The Day of Atonement, when Satan is locked away, in 2033. Shabbat Shuvah, the Feast of Return, during the 10 days of awe, is 2030. And the Feast of Trumpets, when the Messiah is supposed to come, in 2024. Again, when I did this, I was just experimenting and trying to see what would happen with the fall holy days. I was trying to understand how they fit into this time of the end, which at that point I did not understand. But then when I looked at the same chronology for the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed the year before Isaac was born. We know that Isaac was born in the year 2048, and Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed the Passover before in 2047. And I noticed that 2047 was the 3rd year of the 6th sabbatical cycle, which lined up and matched 2033. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Then I looked at the flood of Noah. Now, we read Noah at the very beginning, not for this point, but it's going to be for later. But we see that Noah's flood took place at Passover, the 2nd Passover, in the 4th year of the 3rd sabbatical cycle. Okay, well, that's interesting. It's about a year difference. Again, it's right around 2033. 2033 takes place in the fall at Atonement. I'm wondering if I'm seeing a pattern here. So I started to think about that a little bit more often. And then I came across this. Now, Stephen Spikerman, who was speaking yesterday, he told me to go back and look at this one. This is the one I just ignored because it did not fit my understanding. And my understanding said that it had the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine during Joseph's lifetime had to go and match a sabbatical cycle. But these ones started in the middle of a sabbatical cycle and ended in the middle of a sabbatical cycle. So it didn't make sense to me until I started to compare it. And thanks to Stephen Spikerman, I started to look at this again. And I noticed at the end of the 7 years of famine, they ended at the same time as 2033 does in our time. It's sort of matched. And the beginning of the 7 years of plenty also began or matched 2020 in our time. Well, now I really started to scratch my head. What is going on here? What am I seeing? What is being shown to me? So I had to do a lot of thinking. The 7 years of plenty were for Egypt. For Egypt. The 7 years of famine were for Egypt. Well, who's Egypt today? Babylon, which is spoken of in the book of Revelation. And well, who's Babylon today? The European Union. We've demonstrated that in a number of different things. I'm not going to go into that today, but the European Union. So the European Union is going to have 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. Interesting. But the 7 years of famine also start in the year 2027. Again, interesting. What does that mean? At this point, I'm just showing you stuff, and we're going to explain it as we go. Atonement in 2033. Again, I'm using the TorahCalendar.com. Torah Calendar is a great calendar because they go by the crescent moon. So I used them in a lot of my understanding and calculations, which was a mistake. So Atonement 2033 is October 4th, 5th, 2033. So now I've got a Gregorian date to match up with the Torah calendar date. But if Torah calendar is off by a month because of the barley being Aviv early, such as it was this year and last year, then Torah calendar could be off a month. Torah calendar last year lined up with this. This year they don't. So it could be September 4th and 5th in 2033. Okay, do you see where this confusion is going to go here now? I'm showing you something. There's a problem with our methodology of Hebrew calendar, Gregorian calendar, and Torah calendar, but we're all using all of them to figure out these end times. And I see Simon's picture on here. He's got a cloud over his head. He's got the Aleph Tav in it, but I can see him just scratching his head saying, what? Okay. So I am confident that 2033 is the end of the tribulation when Satan is locked away. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh will be saved alive. 2033 is 12 years shorter than 2045. 2045 is the start of the 7th millennium. The 7th millennium of rest when Satan is not here. So he's got to be taken out at some point before that. And it seems to be 12 years before. Now we have other examples of that, and I didn't get into it too much, but it was brought up in the Doug Hemp interview about David 12 years before the end, and the temple so many years before the end. There's a number of examples like that. So, but I didn't put them in this presentation today. You can go and do that research yourself. So I started again using the calendar, and I've got on this chart, I got from 2020 up to 2033. So right now, using the Gregorian calendar, no, I'm sorry, I'm using the Torah calendar from 2030 to 2033. The Feast of Trumpets is on the 10th, Day of Atonement is on the 10th day of the 7th month. So I bring that all the way back to Passover in 2030, and I end up with 1,310 days. Well, that's not what the Bible says. It's only supposed to be 1,260 days. Well, Torah calendar has a 13th month in the year 2030 and a 13th month in the year 2032. So there's another 59 days there. So now I'm telling you or showing you that the leap years, when we add an extra 8-hour bet.
I'm sorry, Joe, you're breaking up bad.
Okay, 1 second then. Okay, there's nobody here on the internet, so it must be the whole neighborhood. I apologize for that. How much did you understand of me, Johan?
Well, not any of that. It was just broken up.
This whole chart?
Yep.
Okay,
Pretty much.
so this whole chart is using Torah calendar. And Torah calendar is saying that from 2030 to the Day of Atonement in 2033, with the 10th day of that month, is 1,310 days. What Torah calendar is doing is they are putting an Adar bet at the end of 2030, and they're putting an Adar bet at the end of 2032. So if I eliminated those two Adar bets, and that would give me 59 days less, that's still not correct, because it says that the last 3.5 years of the tribulation would be 1,260 days. So we have a problem here, and I'm showing you the problem with Torah calendar, and I'm showing you another problem with the Adar bets. So when you go to figure this out using your Excel program, you must keep all these things in mind. So then I went back to the sighted moon calendar and the barley being Aviv. And I looked at 2030 and 2033 and 2032 and 2031. And I started to add them all up. And I added them up from Passover in 2030. So there's 11 more days after Passover, which on the 15th, that would bring you to the, why did I say 11 days? No, I'm sorry, I'm using the Gregorian dates here still. And I ended up with 1,264 days during this time. I'm trying different methodologies to understand how to get to the 1,260. Torah calendar didn't work. Now I'm using the crescent moon calendar and estimating if there's a 13th month in here. I got 1,264. Still not correct. So now I've gone back and I think I'm changing Torah calendar to the crescent moon calendar. And I'm saying Passover is going to be September 4th, 5th, 2033. And again, this is still not correct. I'm showing you a number of mistakes here, because some of you will end up on these dates and they will think that you've got it figured out. These are mistakes. Atonement is when Satan is taken away. The year 2033 is when that's going to take place. And so we have to come back from that date, whatever date that is, either October or September or some other date, to figure out where all this is going to end up to today. We have to work backwards. So we have to adjust our understanding. We have to adjust the way we think. We have to think the way Jehovah thinks. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Okay, so you're supposed to understand. Then let those in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him on the housetop not come down to take anything, out of his house. Nor let him in the field turn back to take his clothes. And woe to those who are with child, and to those who give suck in those days. But pray that your flight is not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath. For then shall be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall ever be. So when is this? When does this take place? Just before the tribulation. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Okay, so now hang on. What did we just read? This end times. Winter. Okay, did we read that here? No. No, I didn't read that there yet. Okay, so we haven't read that yet. 42 months. You have to have 42 months for the tribulation. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she was placed has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. So the tribulation is for 42 months and 1,260 days. Both these things are important because they got to match each other. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave that out, for it is given over to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. But the woman was given 2 wings, and I've already read this, for time 7.5 time, 3.5 years. So 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. All of them must match. Daniel 7:25, he shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times and a half time. Again, what are we talking? We're talking about the tribulation in all these verses. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. Why is that verse in here? Matthew 24:29. And immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from the heavens, and the powers of the earth shall be shaken. You're being told something here. You cannot go by the crescent moon. Isaiah 13:10, for the stars of the heavens and their constellation shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not reflect its light. Joel 3:15, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall gather in their light. So, using Torah calendar just became obsolete, because they go by the crescent moon in all their calculations. Daniel 12:9, and he said, go, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the end time. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Okay? I'm not saying I'm wise, but I sure hope you are. The wise shall understand. Daniel 12:11, and from the time that the daily sacrifices shall be taken away, and the desolating abomination set up, 1,290 days shall occur. Blessed is he, verse 12, who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. But you go on to the end, for you shall rest and stand in your lot at the end of the days. What is the 1,335 days talking about here? Why are you blessed and eagerly looking forward to that? And what is the 1,290 days? Again, what is the common thing in all of them? They're all counting without the crescent moon. Again, this eliminates the calculation. It's a Torah calendar. But in the 1,290 days and the 1,335 days is a leap year or an Adar Bet. But which one is it? Because, Torah calendar says 2032 and 2030. But the tribulation is 1,260 days, which does not have an Adar Bet in it. So you have 4 clues here: 1,260 days, 1,290, and 1,335 days. We also know that when the moon is not seen, the month is an automatic 30-day month. Just as when Noah was in the ark for 5 months, he counted 30 days each time. And it was 150 days inside the ark. Then he opened the window and he could sight the moon again. So here's the Torah calendar again. Using their months, they have a leap year in 2030 and 2032. And we got the wrong number for the last 3.5 years. It's not 1260. So we're out by 50 days. The 3.5 years has got to equal 1,260 days, and it's got to equal 42 months. Starting at Passover, when the 2 witnesses are killed, until atonement in 2033. Passover is on the 15th day of the first month. Atonement is on the 10th day of the 7th month. So when you add those up, what I did here was I eliminated the Adar bet in 2030. And I kept the Adar bet in 2029. And I ended up at 1,265 days. So from Passover in 2030 to atonement in 2033 with an Adar bet in 2032, using Torah calendar, I got 1,265 days. It's still 5 days too many. What am I doing wrong? So I've now gone from, on this chart, I've taken from the 15th, from the 10th day of atonement, and I've counted backwards, and I've made all the months 30-day months, because you won't see the sun or the moon, according to the prophecies of Isaiah and Joel and others, which means that I arrive at the 20th day, or I have 20 days, which brings me to the 10th day of Passover. The 10th day of Passover. It's not Passover, it's the 10th day of Passover, which is the 10th day, which is the 4 days when the lamb is being collected. But when I start at the 10th of Nisan and count forward using 30-day months without any Adar bets, I end up at 1,260. Without any Adar bets, I end up with 42 months, not 43. I think I've got the final 3.5 years here correctly calculated. 1,260 days, but they don't start at Passover. They start on the 10th day of Passover, the 10th day of Nisan, which is 5 days before Passover. It's just 4 days before the lambs are killed on the 14th. And again, I've got no Adar bets. So that fits the last part of the equation, the 3.5 years, the 42 months, the 1,260 days for the tribulation. So I can plug that in there. But as of right now, I don't know when that is, according to the Gregorian calendar. I can already see some of you pulling your hair out. What's he talking about? Gregorian, Torah calendar, crescent moon. What? Yes, I'm talking about all of them. And you need to become experts in all of them to understand this, because you will have to run at a certain time and you have to be at the right place at the right time. There's no sense in keeping the feast to meet your creator if you're going to do it at the wrong day and he's there at another day. So I went back and I looked at all the Adar bets starting in 2004 up until 2033. Now from 2004 up until 2020, I know when the Adar bets were kept. So Torah calendar I've put here in yellow. Let me just get my little drawing here, drawing pencil. Very slow today. So here in yellow is Torah calendar. The one in orange is the Hebrew calendar. These are the leap years. And in blue is crescent moon or sighted moon, our website. And we've been pretty much in tune with the Karaite calendar, which is in red. So what I did was I marked them each one out up until 2020. And in 2020, well, actually 2019. Those are the leap years at the bottom, the Adar bets. So in 2020, I'm saying in the green right here, I marked that in yellow. There, that's better. The green in 2020, we will have a leap year at the end of this year. So I estimated that in 3 years' time, we'll have another one at the end of 2023 and another one at the end of 2025 or 2026, I'm sorry. But in the last 3.5 years, there are no Adar bets. So that means that we must have one at the end of 2029. So below, you can see whenever everyone else is having them. The yellow right here is Torah calendar. The Hebrew calendar is in orange. They seem to line up with us. The blue ones are, well, that's us. The red ones are the Karaites. And we seem to be in disagreement with them for the next number of years, which is disappointing. So you need to stop the video right now, look at this and understand it. Learn what I'm talking about here. The Adar bets, the different groups that use the Adar bet, how they figure it. How does Torah calendar figure their Adar bets? They use the equinox. So they say, and some of the groups that are watching this say that the equinox determines when the beginning of the year is. So they make Passover always happen after the spring equinox. And the fall holy days always happen after the fall equinox. And that's how they determine it. But is that correct? This year, the barley was ripe early. Caught me off guard. I was not expecting it, did not see that coming. But it was true. The wheat, right now, May 3rd, the wheat is already shattering and ready to reseed itself in some places. So we just saw a video on that this week. Very pleased to know that, to confirm that what we're teaching and talking about is correct. Adar bets. You must figure the Adar bets into your calculations in doing this exercise. So the 11th day, and I'm using Torah calendar here because they got these good charts to use. The 11th day of Nisan before Passover, the two witnesses are dead for 3.5 days in the streets. This brings you to the 14th of Nisan. What am I looking at here? If they're dead, okay, so we started our count on the 10th, well, actually the 10th, and then you start the 11th is actually your first day of your count to get these 1,260 days of the tribulation. The two witnesses are killed in 3.5 days. They lie in the street and they aren't buried. Am I seeing this right? Have I got this figured out right? What am I looking at here? Okay, so I'm using Torah calendar for the first month, and I'm using 2030 as a year. But I'm not saying they got the right date on the Gregorian dates, but I'm saying, look at what's going on here. What are you being shown here? The two witnesses are dead for 3.5 days. Why? Why? And apparently, so it looks like they're killed just before Passover. What? Again, this is 2030. Revelation 11, verse 7. And when they complete their testimony, the beast coming up out of the abyss will make war against them and will overcome them and kill them. And their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And many of the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and they will not allow their dead bodies to be put in tombs. And the ones who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and make merry, and will send one another gifts, because these two prophets tormented those living on the earth. And you're seeing an example of this right now. The world is demanding to go back to work. They're having protests in the States. Let us go back to work. And people are happy to be congregating together. They're fighting against this curse, this pestilence that's come against them. Not one is acknowledging Jehovah. Not one is repenting to Jehovah for their sins. What is going on here? So why would they be giving gifts? Well, I said it's like the end of Passover. It doesn't make sense to me. But could this be Purim on the Hebrew calendar? There is that possibility. Could it be Ramadan on the Muslim calendar? It could be that possibility too, but I couldn't figure out how Ramadan would change without sighting the moon, and so I had trouble proving that. It doesn't look like it is Ramadan, but I'm not 100% sure. And after 3 days and a half, a spirit of life of God entered into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on those seeing them. So when I first looked at this and looked at Torah calendar, I thought, okay, they're killed on Passover. 3.5 days later is Wave Sheaf Day. Wow, and I got excited because they're being raised on Wave Sheaf Day. I said, that makes perfect sense. But am I right? Again, we have a lot of misinformation to sort through and to get you onto the right track of thinking here. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. And they went up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies watched them. So the Hebrew calendar in 2030, according to Torah calendar, Passover is April 18th. Okay? Our Passover, well, according to Torah calendar, is March. But there's a huge but here. But is any of this right? The Hebrew calendar or Torah calendar, are they right? Remember, we're counting 30-day months now. Torah calendar is using a crescent moon. The Hebrew calendar is not using the moon at all. It's going by a fixed calculated calendar with Metonic cycle, Adar bets added in every third year. Okay, so these are my old notes. They are now not correct. And when the dragon saw that he was cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who bore the man-child. And 2 wings of a great eagle were given to the woman, so that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time and a half time. This is the last 3.5 years. You need to know this stuff that I'm teaching you today. Because when you're here at this place, at this time, well, first of all, you got to make sure you're there at the right time so that you can flee with this woman. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water like a flood after the woman, so that he might cause her to be carried away by the river, which is the army that he's sending. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon cast out of his mouth. This is his army. And the dragon was enraged over the woman and went to make war with the rest of her seed, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So, I ask this question all the time. Why did those people that keep the commandments and have the testimony of Yeshua not flee? They did not flee with the woman. Why? We are all on different calendars. And at this time, only one calendar is going to flee and the rest of them aren't going to be ready. Which calendar is the correct one? Is it the Hebrew calendar, the Jewish one, Is it the crescent moon calendar and the barley being Aviv? Or is it the Torah calendar with the crescent moon coming using the equinoxes? Or is it or is it the Gregorian calendar? Again, these dates are wrong. But do you know why they're wrong? And can you show us why? Can you prove us why? This is what we're going to learn today. So, Nisan 11, 2030 to Atonement on the 10th day of the 7th month, 2033 is 1260 days. This is spot on. We have now established the 3.5 years of the tribulation, starting when the 2 witnesses are killed on the 11th day of Nisan. This also tells us that there are no leap years, no Adar bets during this time. With each month being a 30-day month, we gain 20 extra days versus if there were 29 months. So 29-day months and 30-day months. You've now gained 20 extra days during this tribulation period, which pushes the Day of Atonement further out. But because there's no Adar bets, it also brings it back in. Do you see how it fluctuates when you add or subtract stuff? So because of these extra days, we go back in time with 30-day months. It moves these dates as well again, depending on whether they are 29 or 30. So you adjust the Day of Atonement and the Day of Passover get moved according to where they land based on these 30-day months now. I'm hoping I'm explaining that properly. This is important. We now know this last block of time fits perfectly. We have to calculate where that block of time starts from, a known date that we can base this on. That's what I'm trying. We have to do this going backwards. That's what we're doing. This is actually what I've done. So I have this is my Excel program, and I've taken a picture of it here. At the Day of Atonement, at the end of 1260 days in the year 2033, lands on September 15th. So I'll get my pencil out again, draw for you. Here's the Gregorian dates here. Here's the days. And another important thing to keep in mind is you have to have the days of the week. The days of the week, Sunday through Sabbath, do not change. So those are very important to have in here. The Gregorian calendar also has leap years that you have to calculate in. This row here is the crescent moon calendar that we are on, or that I am on. This is the Torah calendar. This is the dates they use. Right here is the proper feast days. So this is the Feast of Atonement right here, September 15th, the Day of Atonement. Now this column here is the Hebrew calendar calculations. It's going to get complicated. And you have to keep each one of these straight in your head. The blue column here, for the Excel program, I just numbered 1 for each day, so I could do the additions of math to get 1260 days. All these calendar dates here, I didn't put them in here. All these dates, I didn't put in the fall holy day dates because they didn't line up. Notice that on our date, it's the 8th month. On Torah calendar, it's the 6th month. Interesting. Interesting. What happened at Passover? The woman fled into the wilderness, and the remnant that kept the commandments, but they kept them at the wrong time on the Hebrew calendar, or the wrong time on Torah calendar, or the wrong time according to our calendar. The beast came and made war with them. So I didn't record the dates after 2030 because they were irrelevant. It didn't matter. You're all dead. That's why this is important. That's why you need to understand. So here I have the Gregorian, the days of the week, the crescent barley calendar, the equinox, Torah equinox calendar, and the Hebrew calendar. And then I have the dates that lined up with the calculations in the Bible. So we've now got the last 3.5 years. So we have to look at this other clue. The next clue is a 1335-day period of Daniel. Thessalonians, for the Lord himself shall descend, Thessalonians 4:16, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we who are alive and shall remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we shall ever be with the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:51, behold, I speak a mystery to you. We shall not all fall asleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For a trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall all be changed. And with this one verse, many people believe that the last trumpet is the Feast of Trumpets. But if you've done the ceremony or read the events of today being Shavuot, if you read Exodus 19, there was thunders and lightnings and a loud trumpet blast. Thunder, as the little children are doing for me this morning. Thunder and lightning as they shook their little clouds. I loved it. And lightning and a trumpet blast as Jehovah descended on the Mount Sinai on Shavuot. This is a very special day today. This is the day you will be changed. And I looked, and lo, the Lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. Wow. That's what this day is about. That's what the 1335 days of Daniel is talking about. And it ends at Shavuot. So you have to understand that. It ends at Shavuot. So now we have a count from Shavuot in 2033, which is based on when Passover is that same year, from the Wave Sheaf Day to get to Shavuot. Now you can go backwards and you count 1335 days, but there's an Adar Bet in there, but there can't be an Adar Bet between 2030 and 2033 for the 1260-day period. So we know that the Adar Bet lands in 2029. Okay? And that brings you back to Tishri. Not the 8th day of Tishri. This is 8 days left in Tishri. Okay, so what have I got here in my notes? We arrive at 35. We must keep the 13th. Okay. The 8th day feast of Shavuot have similar teachings. Okay, so taking 30 days, counting 8 days back in Tishri brings you to what date? The 22nd of the 7th month. What day is that? That's the 8th day feast. So this count of 1335 starts at the 8th day feast in 2029. What's going on between 2029 and 2030? The two witnesses are bringing all the people back to the land of Israel. Right? That's the job of the two witnesses. That's why it's got famine for no rain for 3.5 years during their ministry. I'm believing it starts at the not the wave sheaf day, the 8th day. And the 8th day feast, as we explained yesterday, I guess we explained that yesterday off not being recorded. The 8th day feast has similar teachings to the wave sheaf day. Kind of neat how they're connected here. Again, we're using 30-day months in all of this until we get to Shavuot, and that's the 7th day of the 3rd month. So here in the brown, right here, is my calculations for the 1335. The end of the 1335 on Shavuot. Okay, so I've got the Gregorian date here, but there's a lot of work to figure that out. Again, right here, I'm counting each 7th day Sabbath to get to Shavuot. I'm not relying on our calendar, nor am I relying on Torah calendar, nor am I relying on the Hebrew calendar. I'm purely going by 30-day months. You'll see that every month here is a 30-day month. I'll show you this entire Excel program. It's very long, so I had to take pictures of it. So we've shown you how Shavuot is the wave offering for those of us considered to be wheat. John 4:35. Do you not say it is yet 4 months and the harvest comes? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white to harvest already. 4 months before Sukkot is Shavuot. The harvest is ready now. Don't look to the fall, look now. So now here we are, and I've gone back and I've done the start of the 1335 days. Right here is the start of the 1335 days. And this date is September 19th, 2029. Which is very interesting because at that time, according to our calendar, we are having atonement the same time as the Torah calendar, and we're 1 day off of the Hebrew calendar. But according to Jehovah and the 30-day count, we got a difference of what? 10 days? 20 days? Something's going on. What's just happened? Remember, the 1335 is counting by 30-day months. So that's these are now 30-day months. And here we have a 30-day month. And as we go up, we'll see that we also had to have 30-day months, which changed these dates and made them off. So we have the 7th day, or the 8th day of Tishri in 2029, right here. We have an Adar Bet right here. And when we add that all up, we end up at the 7th day of 2033 being our 1335 day total. And I want you all to go and do this on your own Excel program. Figure this out. Do the math. Double check me. See if I'm right. I've been telling you this since 2005. Double check my math. Okay? So here we are back in the Joseph's timeline. And what I'm showing you is that in 2238, the second year of the famine, right here, 2238, that's when Judah and his brothers recognized Joseph, that he was their brother. And I expect that the patterns follow in 2028, our time, Judah and Joseph will recognize each other as being brothers. That's my belief right now, based on this right here, based on the prophecy of Joseph here. So what's going on? Hang on, what's going on here? The witnesses are preaching because they're killed in 2030. 3.5 years before that brings you to around the Feast of Trumpets in 2026. And there's no rain for 3.5 years, right? So they start here and there's no rain for 3.5 years. And the famine, the bad times start after the rain stop. So notice that this is in the 5th sabbatical cycle. And we're comparing Jubilee cycles now. And we notice something else. So here's the same charts down below that we were just looking at. 2030. At the end of the 3.5 years of the two witnesses. This is Joseph's Jubilee cycle, our Jubilee cycle, and Jacob's Jubilee cycle. And I have Jacob's Jubilee cycle on here because during his time, he worked for 7 years to get the hand of Leah. And at the end of, not the hand of Leah, the hand of Rachel. And at the end of those 7 years, he was given Leah instead. He was deceived. So what I'm showing you is the deception that's going to take place at this time. Many people will think we're being brought back to the land in 2030. But this is not the case. It's a deception. We're being brought back to the land to be killed by the beast who was just let out of the bottomless pit. He's going to slaughter us all in one spot at one time. By understanding the tribulation is 1260 days, we then know there are no Adar bets during that time. I've said this a number of times. I want you to get it and understand there are no Adar bets during this time. By understanding the 1335 days has one Adar bet, one leap year, and it goes to Shavuot in 2033, then you know the Adar bet must be in 2029. Again, this is what I'm showing you here in this chart. 2029 is the Adar bet. Again, all of these are using 30-day months. The 1200-day tribulation from Tishri 11th in 2030 to Atonement 2033 is in blue. So I've taken my original chart, I've plotted them all out here. I've kept the Adar bets that everyone says they are about to happen in the future and in the past. And I put them on the calendar here to see how everything looks. So I put in blue the 1260 days for the tribulation. Then in green, the 1335 days of Daniel from Atonement, or from, where am I going from? From Atonement in 2029? No, it's not Atonement in 2029. I just told you it was from the 8th day feast in 2029. So I did not change my note here. I apologize. It's the 8th day feast in 2029 to Shavuot 2033 in green. So when is Passover? The critical date. This is the pivotal date. Once I've laid this all out, Passover, right here. Let me change that. Passover in 2033 or 2030 will be on Tuesday, April 9th. The 2 witnesses are to be killed 3.5 days before Passover, which will be on April 5th. Notice that the Hebrew calendar has Passover here. 9 days later. They're keeping it 9 days later. And when the beast goes after the woman to chase her into the wilderness, then comes back to make war on those who keep the commandments, there's a bunch of stuff about to take place. So after this date, I no longer record the other calendar holy days. But notice that if we were to stick to our calendar, we would be in the 2nd month. If we were to use Torah calendar, we would be in the 2nd month. Do you see how important it is to have the right counting system? It is the 11th day of the 1st month, 3.5 days before Passover 2030. This is now the 1st month due to the Adar Bet the previous year, and it is a 30-day month, not 29. The 2 witnesses are dead for 3.5 days in the street. Noah was selected. Remember what we read about Noah? Noah was selected on the 10th day just before Passover. And in that hour, Revelation 11, verse 13, in that hour a great earthquake occurred, and the 10th part of the city fell, and 7,000 names of men were slain in the earthquake, and the rest were frightened and gave glory to the God of heaven. Zechariah 14, verse 2, for I will gather all nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped, and half the city shall go into exile, and the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And Jehovah shall go out and fight against those nations like the day he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall divide from its middle, from the east to the west, a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And you shall flee into the valley of my mountain, for the valley of the mountain shall reach to Azazel, and you shall flee as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And Jehovah my God shall come, and all the saints with you. And it will be in that day there shall not be light. The glorious one shall shrink. And it shall be one day which shall be known to Jehovah, neither day nor night, but it will happen that at eventime it shall be light. So here's the picture from Jerusalem, from the walls of Jerusalem, looking towards the south. And you can see on here the Mount of Olives right here. This is the Mount of Offense. The Kidron Valley right here, which can go both that way and off to this way, is where the present day town of Silwan is. And the mountain or the valley of Azazel is right here. You can see the arrow pointing here. The Hinnom Valley, the Gehenna Valley, is outside the walls of Jerusalem. So now you've got your bearing. You're looking south over the Hinnom Valley. So I'm showing you, getting you a picture of the landscape here. Again, we have the Kidron Valley, the Gihon Spring in the city of David, the Mount of Offense, the pathway to Azazel, to the Azazel Valley after the earthquake in green. And then we have the Gehenna Valley. Here's another picture. So this is the Mount of Offense, and it is to be split in half. Here's the town of Silwan. Here is the Kidron Valley, coming down through here, going past the Gihon Spring to the Azel Valley. And here is, where are we? This is the Gehenna Valley coming down here where it meets the Kidron. This is the original city of David right here. And here's the Gihon Spring. These are all key to understanding here. So there again is the Gihon Spring right here. And the Mount of Offense, which is to split in half, and half of it going north and half of it going south. And you're to flee through this valley until you come to the valley of Azazel over here on this side, in this area. And then you follow the Kidron Valley down here. Right here is the wall that they put up. The Israelis have put up this wall, the IDF wall. Somehow it's going to be shattered, and you're going to go through it to follow this valley on down. Again, the Mount of Offense. This is my picture I took. The Gihon Spring, right about here, down in this valley at the bottom. That's the Kidron Valley. This is the Kidron Valley going through here. And the Gehenna Valley goes up this side. So I am estimating that that split goes straight through here. Again, this is with my daughter. And the Gihon Spring is right down here. And the split is going to go straight through there. The Temple Mount is to her left and behind us. The city of David is to her right. Isaiah 16, verse 1. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land, from the rock of the desert to the mount of the daughter of Zion. For it shall be as a fleeing bird cast out of the nest. The daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. Where is that? Take counsel, do judgment, make your shadow as a night. In the midst of the noonday, hide the outcast, do not betray the fugitive. Who are we talking to? This is a message to Moab from Isaiah. At the fords of Arnon, to hide the outcast. Who are the outcasts? The fugitives. That's us. Let my outcasts dwell with you, Moab. Be a shelter to them from the face of the destroyer. That's Satan. For the extortioner is at an end. The spoiler ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. They're to hide us. So here we are, the Mount of Olives right here, the Mount of Offense, and someplace follow this pathway. We're to follow this pathway down to where? The Dead Sea. Here it is over here on the right-hand side, the Valley of Azel, through which you flee. And it'll bring you out at a particular spot that we drive by all the time when we're in Jerusalem at the Dead Sea. The place is called Avnat. Avnat. Here it is here. And here. When you flee, that's where you'll end up. And when you're standing at the Dead Sea, now you can say, what do we do now? Does this sound like something else that happened at the Exodus at the Passover time? Where are the fords of Arnon? These are the fords right here. There's Avnat. How do you get from there to there? I haven't got the foggiest idea. But you'll have to figure it out when you get there. Will you walk on top of the Dead Sea? Will you walk below it? What's going to happen? I don't know. I'm looking forward to finding out. Isaiah 15, verse 5. My heart shall cry out to Moab. His fugitives flee to Zoar. A heifer of 3 years. He goes up the crescent to Luhith with weeping. For in the way of Horonim they shall raise up a cry of ruin. Zoar here is where we get the tombstones from. What are you being told here? Are you being told that you're to be in Zoar after 3 years? After you arrive at the fords of the fords of Arnon? I'm not sure. Again, you have a lot of things to study and consider here, because you make the wrong move and you're going to get killed. Micah 2, verse 12. I will surely gather all of you, O Jacob. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together like the sheep of Basra, like the flock in the midst of their fold. They shall be in commotion because of men. Here's Zoar up here. Here's Basra here. And the easiest way to get there is up this valley. In the fords of Arnon, you've come to here. I don't know if I'm right on this, double check what I'm saying. But these are all the places that talk about that you'll be visiting during the tribulation period, when you will be with Jehovah face to face. The breakers come up before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate and have gone out of it. And their king shall pass before them, and Jehovah at the head of them. The breaker, that's a consolation, the breaker. Great stuff here. What king is going before you? King David. And who's going before King David? Jehovah. How does he do that? He used to do it as a cloud. What an amazing time to be alive. There's about 50 million people, I'm estimating, that will be remnant at this time. Out of that 50 million come the 144,000. 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. They are preparing to start the 7th millennium. Again, here's the fords of Arnon, the middle of the Dead Sea. Here's Basra at the bottom of the Dead Sea. And a lot of people say they're going to be in Petra. I didn't see Petra mentioned here. Check your prophecy, check your teachings, check what the people are saying. So we've established when the 1335 days begin, and we've established when the 1260 days end, the 1335 days. Again, I said atonement. I don't believe that's right. I believe that's the end of the 8th day. So now we got to figure out the 2300 day period. This is going to be hard. So what I've done here is I have in 2029, I have the 30-day and 29-day months according to the Torah calendar. And then at Tishri, I still have it as a 30-day month on this calendar. It should be a 30-day month. I have it as a 29-day. It should be a 30, because each of these 30 days continues after this until we get to the atonement. And I'm trying to calculate when the 2300 days are. Okay, so now before I do this, there's something else we have to figure out. The 1335, starting in 2029, change all these 29s to 30 days. Then the 3.5 years for the 2 witnesses, are they 30-day months? Or are they 29 and 30-day months? That will change things by 20 days, whether you add them in or leave them out. We have another clue though, which is the 1290 days, which I believe ends when the 2 witnesses are killed. Okay, so I've got this slide in here again. Counting the 1260 days of the two witnesses is then from 2026 to Nisan 11, 2030. Again, I said Nisan 11, and I think that should be, because since this took me 2 weeks to do it, and I had to redo it about 4 times. So I've missed some slides here. So this should be, I believe, Tishri 22nd. No, I'm mixing myself up. Sorry. You can see how complicated this does get. Counting the 1260 days of two witnesses then from 2026 to Nisan 11. Again, that should be the 22nd of, no, Nisan 11. That's right. It's Nisan 11. I'm sorry. Nisan 11 when they are killed. Right. Okay. Pay attention. I still get confused. So when we start the 2300 days counting back from that time, this is the red section. This brings us to the 7th month, Tishri 22 in 2026. And again, that's not correct either. So what you can see from this is the blocks of time that are lined up here. And we're looking for the start of the 2300 days. That's what we're trying to figure out. And in this chart, my math told me it was Tishri. Again, a subsequent, I've now changed that again. So using my Excel program, the start of the 2300 days, July 5th, 2026. Or July, yeah, that's 2026. That's not right. It's 2020. 2020. So I have to change that. There's a variable here. Go back to this calendar. There are Adar bets in here of 30 days. Do we count them as 30 days? Or do we have an Adar bet? Or is there one too many? That could change this date and add 30 days previously to it. So instead of being July 5th, it could be June 5th. Again, I don't know exactly when this starts because I don't know exactly if an Adar bet is going to be in or out in the future. And this could be refined even more because during those 2300 days, how many of those 29-day months are actually 30-day months? Again, I don't know that. Will we have people in the land during this time? I believe we will, to spot the barley and the aviv. I believe we will. But at some point, we won't. So this date can be moved by 30, or if it's the Adar, the 29s are changed to 30, that changes by another 20 days every 3.5 years. So when does this begin? Again, I'm not 100% sure. I originally thought it was Shavuot, May 31st, 2020. Now, according to using the calculations I've done here on Excel, July 5th, 2020. Could it be Shavuot today, 2020? Please mute all the mics there for me, Randy. Again, I'm showing you how complex this is. It's not easy. But for one thing for sure, we are close. We are very close. So this is the 2300 days, not the 2330. Lead us into the time when the two witnesses begin to do their work. And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be vindicated. The sanctuary shall be vindicated. That word sanctuary is the saints. Then shall the sanctuary be vindicated. The word sanctuary are the saints, and it is the saints that are to be vindicated. The word vindicated means to do or bring justice. administering the law. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony of which they held. And they cried with a loud voice and saying, until when, Master, holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? So the saints that are beneath the altar are crying for vengeance because they've been slain during these 6.5 years or 6.25 years of the 2300 days. That's what the two witnesses do, bring justice and start the avenging process. The word avenge here is ekdikio, to vindicate, retaliate, punish, avenge, revenge. It is the two witnesses that will avenge the saints who are being slaughtered during those 2300 days, which starts near around now. So I have the end of the 2300 days right here in blue, which is October 21st. Again, here's the end of the 2300 days and the start of the two witnesses. And the two witnesses start by counting 30-day months. Now, according to all of us, all the different calendars at that time, we will be keeping the Day of Atonement at almost the same time. The Hebrew calendar will be one day before us. But what I've done now is I've also come to realize that when I've calculated when the two witnesses are killed and count back 1290 days before that, that brings us to this purple column here. Let me put it here. When the 1290 days begin, when the sacrifices will be stopped. 1290 days until the abomination is set up, which works out fairly good because the sacrifices would be on the Day of Atonement and they will have been stopped. I found that interesting. Again, I'm just putting together the numbers and trying to make them fit in the chronology here and then letting that tell me what's going on. The 1290-day period. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away and the desolating abomination set up, 1,290 days shall occur. Can you mute everybody again, please, Randy? Please, everyone, keep your mics turned off because the feedback is not good, and then you're interfering with other people hearing what I'm teaching. We'll have questions and talks afterwards, but for now, just keep your mics off, please. So where does the 1290 day fit into our calculations? It has to end with the two witnesses being killed. But when you see the abomination of desolation that's spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him who reads understands. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Again, that's why we're fleeing through the mountains. And let him who is in the housetops not go into the house, nor enter and to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not turn back again in order to take up his garment. But woe to those who with babe in womb, and to those who give suck in those days. And pray that your flight is not in the winter, for in those days shall be affliction, such as has not been from the beginning of the creation, which God created until now, and never shall be. This is the start of the great tribulation. And unless the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he has chosen, he has shortened those days. Daniel 12, verse 11, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, so that's the start of the 1290 days, and the desolating abomination set up, that's at the end of those 1290 days, 1,290 days shall occur. So right there, you're told you got 30-day months and you got an Adar bet somewhere in that timeline. Therefore, when you see the abomination, that's Matthew 24:15, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those in Judea flee into the mountains, and let him in the housetops not come down to take anything out of his houses. Nor let him in the field turn back to take its clothes. And woe to those who are with, and so we've just read this in Mark, and it's the same thing in Matthew. But unless those days be shortened, a day for a year, unless those years be shortened, it could be both. Because we can shorten those days by changing the 29s to a 30. You can't, I don't know which way is it going to go. So the end of the 29 or the 1290 days is right here. It lines up with the two witnesses when they end their testimony right here. And the start of the Great Tribulation, which is this time period here. They are killed. The two witnesses are killed on the 11th day of Nisan, 3.5 days, 4 days before Passover. Again, you can stop the video now and read all the notes I have on the side. I'm just going to keep on going for time's sake. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. What are you supposed to understand here? You go back and read about Daniel's statue. What do you understand? So here again is the original city of David. That's I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And we're going to go up like this. And there's the original wall. It came down to this part of the city. And then it went back up and around over to this part of the city like that. That's the original city of David. Here's the Temple Mount up here. That does not figure into our calculations here. What are we missing here? The city of David was a holy city. It's a refuge city. And when the Levites were given, they were given certain cities. When they were given certain cities, they had an area that went around the city that was also holy. And that holy area was said to be 2,000 cubits. So 2,000 cubits around the city of Jerusalem looks like this. Right here, outside the city limits, right here, is where the red heifer offering was made, on the Mount of Offense. This is where what we call Golgotha, the real Golgotha, where they did the head tax. And before I showed you how this mountain was going to be split in two. Where, let me take off some of these lines here, and I'm going to ask you a question. Whoops. Uh-oh, what'd I do? Can you put up a statue in the Temple Mount? There'd be war. You got the Jews and the Muslims fighting against it. Where are the Christians going to put up a statue? Where are they going to put one up that's going to be higher than everyone else? Because they got to be the dominant ones. So the word holy is hagios. Hagios, an awful thing. Sacred, physical, pure, morally blameless, or religious, ceremonially consecrated, most holy, saint. The word place is topos, apparently a primary word, a spot, generally in space, but limited by occupancy, whereas G5561 is a larger but particular locality. That is location as in position, home, track, etc. figuratively, condition, opportunity, specifically a scabbard, coast, license, place, plain. So Numbers 35, verse 4, and the open lands of the cities which you shall give to the Levites shall reach from the wall of the city and outward 1,000 cubits all around. And you shall measure from outside of the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, and on the south side 2,000 cubits, and on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the north side 2,000 cubits. And the city shall be in the middle. This shall be to them the open land of the cities. So again, there's the wall of Jerusalem, and 2,000 cubits brings you over here to the Mount of Offense, the Mount of Olives. Again, this is where the red heifer offering was done. This is right beside where Yeshua was killed. This is the same place where Abraham offered Isaac, and Jehovah provided a ram. 2,000 cubits is 914 meters, or about 914 yards, roughly. It's hard to pace that off. It's a very steep hill. So would this be what it would look like? The area up here where the trees are is owned by the Catholic Church right now. They could easily put up a statue there with no problem. No problem at all. And nobody would say anything. And it could be higher than all the other buildings around. It'd be higher than the Dome of the Rock. Is this the place where the statue is going to be put? It's also part of the holy precinct of Jerusalem, the original city of David. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, this is Matthew 24:15, Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Understand. If we are to flee, then it would be at the same time as Passover in 2030. Starting from 2026, there is one Adar Bet in 2029. So we count back to find the 1290 days. When does that begin? So I've done the math using the Gregorian calendar on here, and I got 1288 days. The Hebrew calendar is 2026 is 1 or 2 days before. No, that's not. In 2026 is crescent moon. This moon will be hard to see. It could be 2 days apart. I potentially have my 1290 days. So again, I'm looking at the crescent moon. There it is. It's going to be very hard to see at this time because it's a very short time before it's seen. And once it disappears below this line, it's hard to see. The sacrifices that they will be performing that are going to be stopped would be according to the Hebrew calendar. And they could be 1 or 2 days before the crescent moon calendar. Remember that year I said all different calendars all had the atonement at the same time? So this is very interesting. When does it begin exactly? You change a couple of these months to 30-day months, and we have the 1290 days. Again, this is September 22nd, 2026. Atonement for us right here, crescent moon and barley, atonement to Torah calendar using the equinox, atonement for the Hebrew calendar, and atonement, which I've done for this calculation of all these days, all line up to that date. This is the start of the 1290 days. So Is this correct? Is this correct? The question I ask myself over and over, is this correct? You each need to go to your Excel program and prove these things. Okay? So after the abomination is, or the sacrifices are taken away, then the two witnesses start. Almost 1 month later. Right here. And that's the end of the 2300 days. So now we can go back in time from that point and see where the 2300 days end up. So we're coming to the end. Frank, you better be ready this afternoon. You're going to make it. The start of the 2300 days is July 5th, 2026 or 2020. I got to change that slide. 2020. Again, is there an 8-hour bet in here that we have to move? There could be. That will push us back to July 5th. So there are blood moons on June 5th and July 5th in 2020. This is when the covenant made with many comes to an end after one Shabuel, after one Jubilee cycle. So why is it now July 5th, 2020? And I've just walked you through it, and not Shavuot 2020, either May 3rd or May 31st, as I've been saying since 2005. Again, back then I used the Hebrew calendar, and I was just coming into the crescent moon calendar at that time. So just using the simple math, 2300 from Shavuot brings you to a trumpets. Then 3.5 years for the two witnesses brings you to the Passover, and 3.5 years for the tribulation brings you to atonement. It all fit nice and neat in a nice little package. But there were some serious flaws in it, which I, at that time, did not see or realize until I did all this over again. And even now, in this presentation today, you can see the complexity of this and that I may still have some mistakes. So July 5th, May 31st, May 3rd, they're all close. Which one will it be? We're going to hopefully see for sure. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I was actually kind of hoping that I was wrong, and that today at Shavuot I would be hanging up sightedmoon.com. That was why we put the countdown clock there. And James put it there, and he said, you know, if you do this, you're going to have to quit. And I said, yep. And I was kind of looking forward to it, to get my life back, to go back to being normal, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but whatever that was. So here's my reasoning. And just as I explained to you why I did this in a certain way, it was very simple math that you could do in your head using the Hebrew calendar. So but there's a huge but. Since then I've seen how the Hebrew calendar can't be relied upon. I've also know the Torah calendar uses the equinox, and you can't rely upon it for accuracy in keeping the holy days according to the barley and according to the crescent moon. They're very good according to the crescent moon, but in the last days, even the crescent moon can't be used. You got to count by 30. And in 2005, I never took the leap years into consideration, the 8-hour bets. And as you see today, they figure prominently, because when we add them, it changes everything. And the 1260 days, there is no 8-hour bet. And even if you were just to count the moons, like some people, there's 86 moons, and count just the moons, even that's wrong, because you add 20 days in there by changing a 29 to a 30. You add 20 extra days, which puts you in a different sequence than the moon. And if you do that twice, that's 40 days over a 7-year period. And if it's more than that, again, what does that do to our count? Where do we end up? It's so hard to understand and figure out. but you have to keep all of these things in mind when you're doing it. So because of Passover being early this year, I had to rethink all of this. And I was rushed because of Passover because I wasn't ready. And I had to rush to get the teaching out for Passover because I wasn't ready. And get ready for Passover. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready at all. And then COVID-19 hit and I wasn't ready to be locked down. So I've now done all this work while I'm in lockdown because Jehovah gave me the time to do it. And even as my presentation today, some of my slides have mistakes on them. Atonement 2033 does not change. That's the day Satan will be locked up. 3.5 years before this must not have a leap year in it, 1,260 days. By making all months 30-day months during this 3.5-year period adds 20 more days to the count. Changing 29 to 30 is 20 times. The 1335 days to Shavuot 2033 proves you have a leap year before 2030. There is a leap year in the 1,260 days of the two witnesses. The 1,260 days of the two witnesses has 43.5 months, while the 1,260 days of the tribulation has 42 months exactly. There's something for you to look at and think about. What? This is because of the alternating 29 or 30-day month each time. So there, what I'm showing you is that the start of the countdown can change by that much. Now, in my slides, I use the 30-day month instead of the 29 and 30. Again, there's so much to take into consideration when you do this. The two witnesses does not say 42 months, as it does for the tribulation, which is an important thing to keep in mind. So there's fluctuation here as to when this starts. No man shall know the day or the hour. That's what we're getting to. The 2,300 days begins July 5th. Again, this is a fluctuating date. I don't think it'll be beyond July 5th. It could be before it by any number of days. But should those days during the 3.5 years of the two witnesses and the 1,290 days be alternating 29 or 30-day months instead of just 30-day months? I don't know. Then this date of July 5th can be moved by that number of days. Again, that's the variable here. Judgment first on the house of Israel. Plague, sword, famine, captivity. 6.25 years. Sacrifices begin before atonement in 2026. When exactly, I don't know. How many of the holy days? I don't know. The sacrifices end on atonement 2026. The 2,300 days end on October 21st, 2026. Again, depending on the 29 or 30-day month. The two witnesses start on October 22nd, 2026. Again, these are very close, but they could be changed by a day or two. The 1335-day count starts on September 19th, 2029. The abomination is set up about Passover 2030. We flee at Passover in 2030. Now, what's going on today? Today, May 3rd, 2020. The Knesset is meeting today. And I'm looking for an announcement today that Israel has approved in the House, the House of Commons or the Knesset, to annex the West Bank as part of Trump's peace plan. Now, this is an article from the newspaper back in January 28, 2020. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday that Israel intends to annex the Jordan Valley and some Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, following the unveiling of the US President Donald Trump's proposed peace plan for the region. So that's when it was released to the public in January. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared that the United States may soon approve Israel's move to annex parts of the West Bank. During a video address on April 26, Netanyahu mentioned the so-called deal of the century peace plan proposed by US President Donald Trump in January, describing said proposal as a promise to recognize Israel's authority over the West Bank settlement land. So this has all taken place while everyone's focused on COVID-19, and you may have missed it. A couple of months from now, this is a quote from April 26th, so just this past week. A couple of months from now, I am confident that pledge will be honored, he said, while Palestinian officials didn't immediately comment on the Israeli Prime Minister's remarks. According to Reuters, Palestinian leaders rejected Trump's plan when it was first brought forward. This development comes after Netanyahu set July 1st. Remember, I said July 5th as the start of the 2300. Now he's setting July 1st for the start of the cabinet discussions on extending Israel's sovereignty to Jewish settlements in the West Bank and the Jordan Valley's annexation. Arab countries on Thursday, April 30th, 2020, condemned Israel's plan to de facto annex parts of the occupied West Bank as a new war crime against Palestinians, the Arab League said in a statement after a video conference of the foreign ministers. Netanyahu will reportedly ask his cabinet to approve the annexation plan on Sunday, that is today, May 3rd, 2020, our Shavuot. The Israeli occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem are illegal under international law, as is the construction of settlements in Palestinian territory. That's according to the UN. And the UN European Union warned Israel against West Bank annexation. The UN's Middle East envoy says the move would be devastating, while the EU says it does not recognize Israel's sovereignty over occupied West Bank. Germany said it advises against the annexation of occupied Palestinian territories. Meanwhile, France's ambassador to the UN, Nicolas de Riviere, went further and warned annexation would not pass unchallenged and shall not be overlooked in our relationship with Israel. All these news items are just this past week. And here we are, July 5th, the start of the 2300-day count that I've calculated. July 1st is when Israel wants to annex the land. Again, my slide here says 2026. That's wrong. It's actually 2020. So, what's going on? Is this the trigger that starts the chain reaction that leads to the destruction of Israel? Again, I don't know, but there's a lot going on, and I've now hopefully provided you with a lot of things to look at and do it on an Excel program. That's the only way I could do it, and you have to keep all the different calendars straight. This is a difficult thing to grasp and understand, but it's beginning sometime around now, whether that's this vote in the Knesset or something else that happens in May 31st, or the actual annexation on July 1st or July 5th. I don't know. No voice from heaven has come down and spoken to me. There are no angels, no visions, no dreams. This is all just me reading my Bible and sharing with you what I see according to the Sabbatical and Jubilee year cycles. So that's it. If I'll take a few questions. If you have a question about what I'm teaching, then I'm going to stop the recording so it doesn't get to be too long. So if you have a question about what I've taught, then ask it now and we'll record it. And if not, then we're going to stop the recording here in a few minutes. And Frank, you're on for this afternoon. Oh, let me pause here 1 second. Oh, I didn't have it ready. I got to get this ready. Oh. I wanted to show you my Excel program because I can scroll through it, which I could not do. It was just, it's a big program. I'm sorry. Johan, how much of that was distorted by internet interference?
Well, what part? I mean, overall, or
Overall, was it okay, or were there lots of problems, or just a little bit?
no? There were quite a few lagging issues.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know how to prevent that. We went with Zoom today so that you would have an opportunity to talk and interact. I could have gone with StreamYard, which has a lot better interaction or presentation about it, but you would not be able to interact except for the chat area. Okay, so let me go back here and I'll bring this back to the front. Share screen, share screen. Okay, Johan, just let me know when you can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I've done this on Excel, and I'm going to explain it to you so that you all can go and do this yourselves on your Excel programs. So we started at Passover in 2020. Now you have to do the Gregorian calendar. You have to do that because it's the thing that helps keep you lined up with a lot of different things. But you also have to remember there are leap years along the way. So you have to include them. The one thing that you got to keep in mind that is your basis for everything is counting the Sabbath. It's a 7-day week, counting each day of the week, because that lines you up to be able to figure out when Shavuot is. So once you have that on there, then you can begin to enter our calendar that we go by, the crescent moon calendar. It normally lines up with the, which is this yellow column here. Let me, I can't draw on this one. Oh, yes, I can. So this is the calendar that we are using. So that was my first one, and I put in the holy days there. Then I started using the Torah calendar, which is the orange one. And you'll see that they were a month different this year. So I have to record that a month different each time. And then I record when the Hebrew calendar has their dates. Okay, so this year the Hebrew calendar and Torah calendar have Passover at the same time. So I record these as I'm going along, and I'm just counting all the way through here. Now in Excel, I put in ones here for, I didn't realize I could have just used the letters on the left-hand side or the numbers on the left-hand side, but I did that to figure out when each event takes place. Now in this column here is the official one that I'm going to use when I've got something solid, I will plug it in there, such as the 1260, the 1335, the 3.5 years of the two witnesses, the 1290 days. That's all plugged into this calendar here. Now in these columns over here, I just use the 1290 and 1335 to count so I can keep them separate so I can see them. And that's basically what I've done. Okay, so now when I just scroll down, I just begin to record stuff and see what's going on. And you have to keep track of the calendars with the days of the week and the Gregorian calendar. You have to make sure they all sync. You have to get in the leap years. So I started with my blue here on the right for the 2300-day count because I was able to work it back. So over the next number of years, Torah calendar and us will be at the same time. And then they throw in a leap year and it puts them out of link. So here they have a leap year and we are out of sync in 2022. Okay, but when we get up to the end of the, near the end of the 2300 days or in 2026, I found it very interesting. And I'm just scrolling through all these different years here. That we all kept the Feast of Atonement for all the feast days at about the same time in 2026. It was after that I realized that that was the start of the 1290 days. So you have to do each column, you have to do all by yourself until you get to the end of 2033, and then go back and plug it all back in. And then when you make a mistake in the 2300 or the 1335, you have to go back and rechange everything. Is it 30 days? Is it 29 days? How do you count these days right here at this time period? 29 or 30? It's a difficult thing to figure out. Again, that changes our start for the 2300 days by that amount of time. So I'm just scrolling through here now. We're now at 2027. Again, the Hebrew calendar, you'll see here, the Hebrew calendar is a month different. The Torah calendar and us, we agree. Okay, so now we're into 2028, and I'm just scrolling through it, just recording all my information. I'm still counting the, well, I forgot to start the count of the 1290 and the start of the 1260 days of the two witnesses right here. We explained that in the presentation. So now we're coming down to the time when the two witnesses are going to be killed and the abomination set up. And I believe, but we also have the time here when the 1335 day starts, again, around atonement in 2029. So what's the trigger here? What's the start of the 1335? Is this when the two witnesses are bringing you back to the land of Israel? Is this when that starts? Because is it going to take a day from the four corners of the world to walk back to Israel, or by boat or by train? How do you get back there? But you have to make sure, whatever it is, that you're back there by Passover, and that you're keeping. So in Torah calendar, and us, if we were to keep our calendar, we would be keeping Passover a month early. But with the Hebrew calendar, they're keeping Passover almost at the right time, but because we're using 30-day months in our counting system, we end up to be a number of days before them. 14 days before them. And the two witnesses are killed. And the abomination that's set up is at this time. And the earthquakes, and we are to flee. And the 1335 day count continues. And we keep on going here. We're now in Moab, and we're hiding as a shadow in the night. Until we get to the end of the 1335, when we will be changed in the twinkling of an eye and raised from the dead if we're dead, to meet him in the clouds. Shavuot, May 15th, 2033. And then atonement, that same year, is when Satan is locked away. So anyone can do this on an Excel program, but you must be leery of the different calendars and what they teach you and how they lead you astray. The Gregorian, the crescent moon and barley, the Torah calendar, and the Hebrew calendar. Anyone can do this. All of you can double check what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm going to take a few questions now. And Lewis, you got your hand up. You're at the top of the list. Go ahead.
Hey, Joe, thanks. That was awesome.
Thank you. You got a question?
Someone had asked earlier in the chat, could you make the slides available? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
And a couple things. Someone had asked earlier in the chat, If you could make
Okay, Louis,
the
you're breaking up.
slides available, perhaps on the website or somehow.
Yes, they will be there. James has set up if you go to the archives in the library, now I haven't double checked them yet, but he said he was setting up a place there to put all the notes from each presentation. Will be there, so people can get the notes. So these will be there as well.
Great. I just had a question. I didn't really understand why the last 3 years were all 30 days. Could you maybe go over that again?
The 3 years of the tribulation or the two witnesses?
It seemed from 20, if I remember right, 2030 to 2033, each month was 30 days.
Okay, well, if you look in Revelation, if you look at all the places that are talking about the tribulation period, it's 42 months, not 43, 42 months, 1,260 days, and 3.5 years. So those things must line up. And if you use a 29 or day month in there, it doesn't work. If you use a leap year in there, you get 1,290 and not 1,260. You get 43 months. So that doesn't work. So you have to take the leap year out. The leap year that Torah calendar puts in there doesn't fit. Actually, Torah calendar has one in 2030 and 2032. So that doesn't work. And you have to get your brain around it. The Bible says the sun and the moon will not give its light. Therefore, when you take out the 29 and make it a 30, in 3.5 years, that's an extra 20 days. So that's 20 extra days put on there. That pushes the end number, the end date, ahead 20 days. So adding those extra 20 days is almost like adding a leap year, an 8-hour bet. Okay? So that's for the last 3.5. The 3.5 before that, those 42 months aren't stated. It's just that the two witnesses will preach for 3.5 years, time and a half time. So if we leave that as 29 and 30, then you can get 43.5 months, which doesn't make sense. But when I go through it, it does. But then I changed it later and I thought that, okay, it's got to be 30-day months because of the 1290 and the 1335 overlapping. And so there's a lot of things to think about when you're doing this. So you've got to keep them all in mind. And it will get tricky and it will give you a headache. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Volatar, I believe Volatar is from the Philippines. You got your hand up. Okay, can't hear you if you're trying to talk. You have to unmute yourself. Wilson, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
All right. Going back to the chart that you just had up on Excel,
Okay,
can you tell me, because I've had this question for years, and since you have that chart, in March and April of 2011, I can't remember.
I didn't go back to 2011.
Okay, well, what struck me was that year, I remember specifically this was before I knew of your teaching and everything, and we were looking at different calendars and whatnot, had been back and forth on different ones. But that year, all the calendars, I say all, the ones I knew about, the Jewish calendar, the sighted moon, and those doing equinox, all were celebrating Passover on the same day. And I couldn't figure out how in the world that was possible. And it must have been with some postponement rules or different things. And like, how do you have ones that use the sighted moon being on the same day as ones that use conjunction? So anyway, it's just one of those things.
The postponement rules. So here's something else. Again, this talk today is all about calendars and being able to understand them.
Right.
So that's the trick here. So you have to understand what postponement rules are. And for new people, the postponement rules are designed by, they developed over the century, starting after Rambam, to move the holy days in the fall so that you didn't have the weekly Sabbath beside a holy day on Friday or Sunday. They thought that was going to be too hard for them to have both of them back to back. So they created the postponement rules. Now, the postponement rules were also created so that the crescent moon would not be seen in another part of the world before it would be seen in Jerusalem. That's actually rule number 2. So they, even in the postponement rules, they're acknowledging the crescent moon as being the proper way to do it. So when you use the postponement rules, you have to keep this in mind. Okay, they are added. They're added. Let me, Vicky, can you mute your mic, or Randy, can you mute her mic? I don't see her. I just hear her. But okay, now I forgot where I was going. Wilson, help me out.
You were explaining the postponement rules. You were on the second one.
So the postponement rules, sometimes when they postpone the holy days according to the Hebrew calendar, they end up on the crescent moon because they got to move it by 2 days. So it's sometimes it works out to be spot on. That's the whole, that's the purpose of them, to be as close to the crescent moon as possible. But then, you know, recently, in the last, I don't know how many years, it's just been according to the conjunction. And so people just use it for that, and they forget that it's about the crescent moon.
Yeah, thank you. That was just something as you were talking, I thought, oh yeah, I had that question years ago and I never got an answer. I'd asked multiple people and they kind of just like, what are you even talking about? What do you care? You know? So. Yeah.
When we go back and look at the tombstones, I did an article about the tombstones here when I first found out the barley was going to be early. I had to go check the tombstones, and there's a lot of information on there that tells us that certain ones started to use the calculated calendar, which would be 100 years, about 100 years after Hillel, that they started to use it. You can see the dating methodology being changed. Whether they had postponement rules at that time, I don't think so, but they did develop over time, and Rambam is the one in the 12th century who instituted it and made it standard for everyone around in the diaspora. Okay, Zechariah, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Hey, shalom, brother Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you for the presentation, and that was really great because you it's not easy to show your humility and your thought process of how you got to all this information. That's very strenuous, but it's really a blessing. Quick 2 questions. Can we download a copy of your Excel chart so we can enter in the additional information?
Well, you're probably going to tell me how to do that. I think we can. Okay, let me see. I'll talk to James. I'll put it on the website there so you can download it from there.
Okay.
Yeah, we should be able to do that.
All right, that would be cool. Yeah. And then the second question is, I got a curveball for you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you threw me a couple, so I'm gonna throw you one.
Okay.
Daniel 9, Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. So your opinion is that it's referencing to Israel, correct?
Let me just pull it up here. Daniel 9, 26.
Verse 26, yeah.
Okay. And after 62 weeks, Messiah, so you're talking about the Messiah here.
Correct.
Shall be cut off. Okay. Yeah. So what's your question?
So if it is Israel, but verse 27 says, and he meaning singular, he as in a guy. So that my question is, why would it be Israel if verse 27 says he?
Okay, so the word what we are being translated in our English Bible, it was a capital M for Messiah.
Mhm.
There are no capitals in Hebrew. And the word in Hebrew is Mashiach, which means anointed. And after
Okay.
62 weeks, anointed shall be cut off. So the anointed is who? And we've got other teachings that explain this in more detail than what we did today. Today, I'm just blasting through some of this stuff to do the 2300-day counting and how to calculate that. So the Messiah here is the Mashiach. Now I showed in the Hebrew, or Habakkuk, I believe it's Habakkuk or Hosea, that Messiah is also Israel. Israel is
Okay.
his anointed. King David is his anointed.
Right.
So in Daniel 9:25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince, this is King David, the Messiah, the anointed, is 7 weeks or 7 Jubilee cycles. So from the burning bush, you count 7 Jubilee cycles, and after 7 Jubilee cycles, there's King David being born. There's King David being anointed by Samuel. There's King David being anointed by Judah. There's King David being anointed by all of Israel, just as this prophecy said. And then from 62 weeks, after that brings you to 1996. Who's we talking about? We're talking about King David right now. And after 62 weeks, the street shall be built again in the wall, and even at times of affliction. And after 62 weeks, Messiah, could this be King David? No, because he's already dead. So if this brings us to 1996, is this Yeshua? Is he going to be cut off and killed again? No. Again, so you have to establish, first of all, that these 70 weeks are talking about 70 Jubilee cycles. That's the dominant thing here. It's not the 70 weeks of Yeshua. It's 70 Jubilee cycles. So after 1996, which is after the 62 weeks, what is it that's going to be cut off? It's the anointed. Well, what is the anointed? That's Israel. And all prophecy talks about Israel being cut off, the saints being trampled underfoot in the times of the end, in their captivity, because we have to come out of captivity and we have to be redeemed and rescued by our Redeemer. Okay, so now you're asking about the he in verse 27.
Correct.
And he shall confirm. My Bible has a small he, so even the interpreters understand that the he is not the Messiah. If it was the Messiah, they would have put a capital he. Who is it he? This is Satan, or Satan's representatives, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Now, we believe that that is the United Nations Environmental Program, started in 1972. This covenant that the UN tried to get everyone to join up to save the environment. Again, why does the environment need a human rights law? That was the very first thing they added to it, the human rights laws from the UN declaration that they began in 1947. So what does a blue whale or a panda bear need with human rights? Nothing. But they're put in there, and then in 2011, those human rights laws were changed and amended to include LGBT. And then LGBT began to be pushed everywhere in the Western world for equal human rights, gay marriage, paychecks for pregnancy when you adopt a child. All these different things are being pushed by the LGBT and by our Western leaders because of the change in the human rights laws. There, Lewis, there's my phone again. And so the human rights law became the tool for the LGBT, which was the tool or through the United Nations Environmental Program to get all the nations of the world to accept this abomination. That's why Obama promotes it. That's why Trudeau promotes it, because of this. So Trump signed out of it as soon as he got in office, and that could not be approved until 4 years later, which is November this year. So that's our connection there. The other connection is the common market that the British were involved in. Again, that's 49 years this coming December 31st as well. So it could be one or both together. But we both signed a contract with the devil.
That's very interesting. So, and speaking of both, I had a theory on, this is the last thing I'll say, and but on verse 26, I started to understand that this could be a double reference in scripture, or should I say dual prophecy. I got to do some more research on that. I'm not sure to get it all together, but I was there's something in the scripture. Sometimes when one verse it can mean two things also in two different time periods. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to.
There's a lot of people that believe this verse is talking about Yeshua and his first coming. And they use Azahars as their start date and the start of his ministry in 27 or 28. Again, depending on when he died date, whether it's 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and even 37, I thought I saw. So they all adjusted to that and changed the start of Azahars in 445 to 457, depending on which theory you subscribe to, which, yeah, is this possibly talking about that? I'm saying no, and I'm saying a strong no, but for argument's sake, I will concede and let you believe that, but I don't believe it at all. If Yeshua is going to use this, or if Yeshua was the Messiah, why did he not use this to prove that he was? None of the apostles used it. The first one to use it was Rabbi Akiva, to prove that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. And in doing that, he had Rabbi Yossi, who wrote the Seder Olam, fudge the dates so that they would look like Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, the son of the morning star. And then after that, when that didn't pan out, so that was in 133, then in 180, I think it's Aurelius began to use it to say that this was about Yeshua. And then all the church fathers did it, but they kept, couldn't get it quite to work out until Julius Africanus developed it and started with Azahars to Yeshua. And then the period afterwards, the remaining 7 years of this prophecy, or 3.5 years, could happen at any time in the future. And this is the start of the gap theory. So that's what that's about. So because of that, because Yeshua never used it and the apostles never used it, I'm of the strong opinion that this was not about Yeshua. It was something else. And I believe it's about Israel in these last days. But I will concede that it could be about Yeshua. Having said that.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Glenn, go ahead. You got your hand up. Glenn Karen.
Yes. Talking about the months being 30 days and assuming they are 30 days. Recent time, I've been thinking that knowing that it's a 29 and a half day month, of course, you can't go and do a half a day. So we do the alternating 29-30 when we can't see the month, the sliver. So we go 30 days if we don't see. We call it the next day if we don't see the sliver. Why would we go and count 30 days from that point on? Would it be not more accurate to alternate from 29 and 30 and 29 and 30 until we actually see it again? And then we may be closer. Is that something you may have used in your calculations instead of 30, just alternating? Maybe that's part of the days missing.
Okay.
Just a thought.
No, that's an interesting thought. So the rule is, so go back to when Noah was inside the ark. He can't see the moon. He could have alternated back and forth, like you said. If he was in the ark for a year, he could have done that. But it says he counted 30-day months for 5 months. And so some people assume that to be a 360-day year. Well, that's another erroneous teaching. So if we were to use the 29 or 30-day alternating just because we don't know, Okay, so let's say you did that. Let's just do that. We come to we haven't seen the sun and the moon for a year because of the smoke and the fires and all the wars and stuff. But we come to the end of the 6th month and the start of the 7th month. Is it a 29th day or a 30-day month?
Well, that'll depend. It'll depend on where you landed. You always once you don't know, you count 30. You start the first time you don't know, you say 30. Now you're at 30. The next month you're going to go, well, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 29. My hunch it's going to be 29, and the next one will be 30, and you just go off of what you left off until you see the sliver again.
Yeah.
And I would think you'd be more accurate because obviously if you're counting 29 days, you're going to be short. If you're adding 30s, you're going to be long. But if you alternate, you're going to be closer. You're not going to be behind, but I think you'll be closer. I mean, it's a thought, I don't know.
No, hey, Glenn, it's a good thought. And what you're bringing up is that you're bringing up an interesting point that everyone needs to consider. So when you get to the 7th month, the question remains, is it going to be is the 6th month going to be a 29 or 30 month? And that depends on the one before. Well, okay, what if we all started doing our own thing again? We'll all end up keeping the Feast of Trumpets at the wrong time. That's the danger here. So now, in the 30 days of the 1260 and the 1290 and the 1335, Jehovah's telling you to be wise, telling you to understand. Understand. He says, understand. You can't see the moon. We may not have anybody to tell us when the barley is at that time. Right? So you need to be wise.
I see what you mean. We wouldn't be in unity. We would be all on our own doing that wherever we are.
So
you're right.
So some people are in the prison camps up in Syria. Some are in the prison camps down in Iran or Egypt or who knows where. Some are hunkering down in a cave someplace in the wilderness. They've managed to escape. But you know that on September of this date that we had all kept Passover at that time. I can start counting from that time. And the 2,300 days, we are supposed to start count. We need to do the count. So this thing that Pauline has on our website for counting the holy days each year, counting the months, it's going to be a priceless tool to have to be able to do that. I don't know where she got that inspiration from, but it wasn't from me. That was brilliant. We need to count every day for the next number of years. When was the last time we kept Passover? When was the last time we had a crescent moon or a 30-day month? And keep the counting going forward. Because we need to know these 2,300 days. We need to know the 1290. We need to know the 1260. But the 1260, the 1290, the 1335 tell you, because they overlap each other, that there is one Adar bet. One Adar bet during that time. Torah calendar has 3 or maybe 4 during that time. If we were to stick to our calendar of alternating months, we would have 3 for sure. But the Bible says there's 1. And so that Adar bet gives you 1 extra 30-day month. So now the 1,260 days, the last tribulation, it adds 20 days, which is almost like adding another Adar bet. So when you come to the end of that in the Day of Atonement, and Satan's locked up, that's a very, very special day, because that means that problem has now gone away. So the month that comes after that, the month that follows that, where will the moon be? At what phase? It really doesn't matter. We just start when we see the crescent afresh. So if the month following the Day of Atonement is 30 days, 29, 10 days, then we'll start with the crescent moon, start fresh as soon as we can see it. And we might not see it for another few months till the smoke clears. Just like the pollution around the world has dropped off this past month because everyone's staying at home. So it might take another 30 days. I don't know. Again, it's a good question, but people need to get these things straight in their head. Why do we have a 30-day month? Why is it 29 or 30? Because it's a 29.53469, I don't know all the numbers, 5 something days for the moon to make a revolution around the earth. And Jehovah created that for a purpose, his purpose. It was never a 30-day month throughout history until the flood. The flood didn't change it to a 360-day year to a 360-day, 65-day. That never happened. It's another good theory.
Thank you, Joseph.
Wilson, you had your hand up. I don't see it.
Oh, I was just going to mention with Zechariah, his question about the he being singular, referring to Messiah. That seemed to be the issue that was bothering him there. And there's a lot of examples of Israel being referred to in the singular. One that comes to mind for me is when Jehovah refers to Israel as my firstborn son in the singular, but obviously speaking of the nation.
Okay. Anyone else with a question about what I presented today? Because if not, then I'm going to I'm going to turn off the recording, not end the meeting. Okay, let's close this off with a prayer before I do that. Our Father Jehovah, our powerful and great Creator, thank you so much for this day, this Shavuot. Thank you for the understanding that you've given us and helping us to learn and to grow and to come to know you better and to grow closer to you in your ways and in what you want us to understand. I don't know that I have it all 100% correct. There's so many variables here, but you know what's right and you know what's wrong, and you're going to show us when we need to know it. So I ask you, Father, to help everyone here to understand all the variables and the different calendars and how they all work and how they help us to keep track of your time and how you're going to tell us to keep track of your time when we won't be able to use the sun and the moon. So I pray, Father, you be with everyone here. Bless them to understand this. Bless them to be able to teach it to others, because there's going to be a number of the people that need to know it. And I ask you to be with them all. And I thank you for today. Thank you for the tremendous blessing you gave us today, your Torah today, the Holy Spirit you gave another gift to us today on this day. And I thank you, Father, for blessing us with the knowledge of you and calling us. Wow, like not too long ago, we didn't care, but now we care. And it's because you've opened our eyes to your truth. So we thank you for that. We ask your blessing upon it. Please continue to reveal your truth to us, all of us, each of us, from the smallest to the greatest. Help us all to understand so that we can all bring glory to the name of Jehovah wherever we go. Amen.